has been known as the great performer. We'll talk about that a little bit. But he's got 3 Grammys to his credit, 7 gold records. He's performed at the White House during the Clinton administration. He was in 1995. He was ABC News' Person of the Week, and you probably saw him on CBS News Sunday Morning with Dr. Billy Taylor. He does a couple of radio shows, and if I remember right, he has or had a show on BET, and we'll talk about that as well. Mr. Ramsey Lewis.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing just fine. Glad to be finally sitting here having the opportunity to talk with you. And just tell us a little bit, when did you finally, after taking lessons and what have you, what just made you decide, okay, I can do this for a living?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What made you decide after studying and what have you that playing piano, playing music was something you could do for a living?
Well, it evolved into being something I did for a living. I was 11, 12, 13 years old, somewhere in there, when I decided that I loved the piano, the feel of the piano, the sound of the piano. I started taking lessons when I was 4, and I thought that might be something I would love to do the rest of my life. But at that time, I didn't foresee Grammys or gold records or people paying me money to do it. It's just that I love the music. But things evolved. I guess it's a lesson in being committed to what you're doing, and doors will open, because one day after church, I was 16 years old, and the other musician in church, he played the piano also. He was a couple of years older than me. He was in college. He says, "Would you like to play in our band?" Well, at 16, he thought I was good enough to play in his band, because his piano player was going to leave and go play with Sarah Vaughan. Now, that's how good the piano player was, and that's how good the band was. So, long story short, I didn't do very well the first job because I didn't know how to play jazz. I knew classical music and gospel music, but Wallace Burton, the leader of the band, said, "Come over to my house tomorrow and I'll show you a few things." And he did. And that was a door that opened, and we were playing as a group, as a 7-piece group. But the Korean War broke the group up, and the rhythm section was left, and we, the 3 of us, L.G. Young, Red Holt, and myself, were playing at a place called Stelzer's in Lake Meadows. And Holmes, Daddy O'Daly, a disc jockey, came in and heard us and said, "You guys ought to be making a record." And we said, "Yeah, sure, we've heard that before." And he set it up where we got signed with the Chess recording people, and we made many records with them, including the In Crowd. So the story goes on, but I can tell you that as the story evolves, it's all about doors opening, and I think what I've learned is being prepared, that in all of our lives, I think doors open, but are we always prepared to step through the door and then take care of the business? And I think the fact that I love to practice and love the piano, when opportunities came my way, I was able to take care of it.
Okay, now that on the first album, the group was called Ramsey Lewis and the Gentlemen of Swing. That was you and Red and Holt?
Red Holt and L.D. Young.
Right.
Red Holt is drummer and L.D. Young bass player.
Now I remember, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I remember walking into a record store. I know it was in the 70s, but I saw an earlier album from that time, earlier than that particular period. But I happened to see you and a couple other people on there, and you had on white dinner jackets, looked like red bow ties and cummerbunds. One of them was Maurice White.
No, that was much later.
Okay.
The second album we put out, the first one was The Gentleman of Jazz. The second one was the first was Gentleman of Swing. The second one was Gentleman of Jazz. And on that particular one, we had on tuxedos. But much later, this was now, I'd say, in the middle 60s, the original trio broke up, and Maurice White and Cleveland Eaton joined the trio. And, yeah, we did do an album where the 3 of us had on dinner jackets.
Tell me, what did Maurice bring to the group as a percussionist?
Maurice White, very, very quiet young man, very quiet, very humble. But when he got behind the drums, he was red hot. And what was valuable about Maurice was his sense of time and his sense of rhythm. Also, Maurice had studied jazz, and so that he knew the foundation of music. He knew the earlier heroes of our music, the people whose shoulders we all stand on. But he also knew R&B music and gospel music. So there wasn't anything that I wanted to play that Maurice couldn't add something valuable to it. And I sorely missed him when he left. But, you know, one night after we played, he had been with me about 3-4 years then. He says, "Well, he talked very softly. Man, I want to form my own group. Well, I thought he was going to leave and form his own jazz group, but no, he said, no, this group we're going to dance, we're going to play jazz and pop and R&B and rock and roll. And I thought maybe he had heat stroke or something. I told him to take an aspirin and lay down. But surely enough, a few weeks later, he says, well, I'm going to go form my own group now. And that was Earth, Wind, and Fire, and one of the super groups of all time.
And you all eventually got together on and created that Sun Goddess album.
Yeah, that happened by chance. I was in the studio recording in Chicago. He was in New York performing with his group. He called me and said, I have a song for you, and I'm sure it's going to be a hit record. In fact, I think it's going to be bigger than your in crowd. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'll send it to you. He said, well, wait a minute. We're going back to L.A., so if you want some of us to stop in Chicago and record it with you, we'd gladly do that. So I said, yeah, that'd be wonderful. So we spent 2 or 3 days in the studio working on this one song, and he said, okay, you got it. I said, what's the name of it? He said, the name of it is Hot Dog It, but don't worry about it. It's going to be a hit record. So I said, okay. And it was almost like an afterthought when he said, oh, there's this other song, which he hadn't named yet. And it's just a melody. It's a really nice, singable melody, about 16 bars long. But, to make it longer, everybody can stretch out and take a solo. And we did that song. It took us just a few hours to do that song. And I said, so what are you going to name this? He said, well, I think I'll call this Sun Goddess, but don't worry about this song. Your hit record is going to be Hot Dog It. But as history will record, and as we all know now, I put Hot Dog It out, and I think my mother bought a copy and my sister bought a copy. But the album was selling like hotcakes, and we called around, the record company called around, and he said people are just coming in asking for that song called Sun Goddess. And God bless Maurice White. He did bring me a hit record. It wasn't the one he said it was going to be, but both of them were his, and I take them the way they come.
Well, now, you all, you and members, Maurice and members of Earth, Wind and Fire went on to do some more recordings. Were they on Solongo?
Yeah, they were on Solongo, and they were on Tequila Mockingbird. We did about 2 or 3 albums. Some of the albums, they weren't on the whole album, but some of the albums, they were on some of the songs. Because we liked each other, and we liked, they liked my music, and I loved their music, and it was a just fit.
Well, who else have you, of the R&B world, had you managed to collaborate with recording-wise?
Well, not many. Stevie Wonder, I think, probably the most outstanding person. Of course, he's from all the jazz world. I mean, all the music world, R&B, pop, jazz, you name it. But also, Stevie wrote some songs for us, and those were unforgettable sessions. Recording with Nancy Wilson, those were unforgettable sessions. And we did some albums with Grover Washington Jr. and Art Porter. Joe Sampler and I did some songs together, 2 pianos. And those were all wonderful things that I'll always remember.
Okay, now, and I'm just kind of leading up to the current album that you have out now. And because talk about that a little bit, and what was the thought process behind the creation of it and releasing it at this time? We
were playing in Tokyo, and we had played a week there, and we were getting towards the end of the week, and the proprietor said, we'd really love you to come back, and would you like to bring somebody with you when you come back? And I hadn't thought of that because we had been a trio for so long. But once I got back to Chicago, I gave it some thought, and I invited Henry Johnson and some others to come and do maybe a little rehearsal jam session to see how it felt to have other than a trio, to augment the group to a quintet. And it felt really good. It felt so good that I immediately, within just weeks, recorded the group and called my agent and said, listen, this is the group, the quintet, the electric band that I want to take out on the road. And so we started last year playing together, and we're going strong right now. And that's where we'll see you when we get to Kansas City. That's right. You'll be at the Gym Theater May 19th. So, and that's a lot of in talking with people around you, they're definitely looking forward to it. But tell me about, is there anything about performing for crowds here in Kansas City that stand out to you? Well, Kansas City is one of the major cities when it comes to jazz and great music, and all the famous people that have not only played there, but that were born there. And so when you talk about jazz, not only New Orleans, Chicago, New York, but Kansas City is a major city, and the people from Kansas City are wonderful people, and the food also. When I first played there, I don't know if the Gates people are still there, but I'll never forget, we couldn't wait to get to Kansas City to get some Gates barbecue.
Okay. Well, my last question. Now, I talk a little bit about you. Do you do any teaching or have been involved in any foundations that are doing what they can to help maintain the arts in the schools or what have you?
During our sound check rehearsal, many times we have a school or a group of students come and witness the sound check rehearsal, and then after that, I join them in the auditorium and we do a master class. So yes, I believe in spreading it, the information about. That's how jazz grew to where it is today, by sharing. It's only within the last several years that musicians got into transcribing solos in the schools, but before that, it was oral. You hear it, you play it, or you have the gumption to walk up to, as I did, Oscar Peterson and others, and say, "Can you show me how to do that?" So it's important to share, and yes, I do master classes when I can.
You know, I really want to thank you for taking the time out in advance of your upcoming appearance here in Kansas City at the Gym Theater, and you know, had a chance to really listen to the album, and I know that, and that Sun Goddess in particular, it used to be my highway song. So I had to have that on when I was, you know, if I had to get on the highway somewhere, it had to be part of that collection. So, but you know that, and you know all of those things, those collaborations in particular with Earth, Wind & Fire, but a lot of them before as well. So tell you what, we do plenty to play it right here on the Tuesday Midday Medley, and you know, can't thank you enough for, you know, keeping on. And thank you.
Well, I've
very
enjoyed
much.
talking with you, and I hope to see you.
Well, we'll just have to see. You
Take care now.
You do. You too.
Bye-bye.